Welcome back, students and teachers. I'm Shelby Higgs, the head coach here. So today we're going to be talking about two very important things in this world, conformity and non-conformity. So before we get started, we need to introduce you to a couple of our other coaches.
I'm Coach Kylie.
I'm Coach Courtney.
Okay guys, come on, let's break this down from a fundamental standpoint.
Now we're going to take a look at the coach's opinion on conformity and non-conformity.
So I think conformity is when people are like purposely trying to fit in with people, like just because they're feeling left out or like that they're not in a certain group or something, and they start changing what they like to do, not being themselves, changing what they wear to fit like what the norm is or something. And I think non-conformity is when people purposely choose to be different than everyone else in like a unique way, and they just are more of like an individual person and be.
So for our introduction into the arts and literature, we decided to show how conformity isn't as impactful as non-conformity through dance, and so now presenting the video Porch Ouch, which is a dance about bullying.
I'm not the only kid who grew up this way. Surrounded by people who used to say that rhyme about sticks and stones. As if broken bones hurt more than the names we got called, and we got called them all. So we grew up believing no one would ever fall in love with us. That we'd be lonely forever. That we'd never meet someone to make us feel like the sun was something they built for us in their tool shed. So broken heartstrings bled the blues as we tried to empty ourselves so we would feel nothing. Don't tell me that hurts less than a broken bone. That an ingrown life is something surgeons can cut away. That there's no way for it to metastasize, it does. She was 8 years old. Our first day of grade 3 when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground where we found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clues that we were there in grade 5. They taped a sign to the front of her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful. Because of a birthmark that takes up a little less than half her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom. Because they see her heart before they see her skin. Because she's only ever always been amazing. We weren't the only kids who grew up this way. To this day, kids are still being called names. Classics were "Hey stupid," "Hey spaz." Seems like every school has an arsenal of names getting updated every year. And if a kid breaks in a school and no one around chooses to hear, do they make a sound? Or they're just background noise from a soundtrack stuck on repeat when people say things like kids can be cruel? Every school was a big top circus tent. We kept walking the tightrope. It was practice, and yes, some of us fell. But I want to tell them that all of this is just debris left over when we finally decide to smash all the things we thought we used to be. And if you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, get a better mirror. Look a little closer. Stare a little longer. Because there's something inside you that made you keep trying despite everyone who told you to quit. You built a cast around your broken heart and signed it yourself. You signed it. They were wrong. Not the faded echoes of voices crying out names will never hurt me. Of course, they did.
So as you can see, after watching that video that my dance team performed, we really wanted to make a statement about bullying in a different form, because most people when they dance, they make a statement, but it's normally just like going out there and dancing and smiling. But we really wanted to show how the people with bullying somehow don't have like voices, and we wanted to show like how being like a nonconformist, you can express yourself in different ways.
Now the coaches are going to be taking a look at conformity and nonconformity through American history.
Now up to bat,
the 1950s to the 1960s batting for conformity. So first in the 1950s, this is the era right after the Cold War, and this is a time where many Americans began to have similar feelings and essentially like their feelings conformed, and they began to feel extremely patriotic and at the same time fearful of the Soviet Union. And again, during the 1950s, we have when all the housing began to look the same, and this then developed this idea of the American dream and the perfect American family. So essentially in this perfect American family, you'll have a working father, a housewife mother, and like 2 kids. And when people would come to the United States, they would see this American dream plastered everywhere, and they felt the only way I'm going to succeed and be happy in America is if I conform to this idea of what this family looks like.
Okay, now to bat for conformity is the 1960s. And within the change of era between the 1950s, there are still patriotic people, and that led to the Vietnam War. And within the Vietnam War, the United States and the Allies were fighting against North Vietnam because we didn't want like communism to spread everywhere. So we were all fighting for democracy, and the democracy is what like led people to conform to the way of like fighting for the war, even if it wasn't the best decision at the time. And this led into the civil rights movement because within the civil rights movement there were minorities, and we wanted to like keep the peace and the social structures, so everyone was like conforming to the ways of like keeping everything the same.
Now we want to look at the housing that's different from the housing that was in the 1950s and the 1960s. So during the 1950s and 1960s, again, we had all these houses that looked exactly the same in suburbia. And during the 1970s, now we have houses that have weird angles that no one has seen before. They look completely different from one another. And people who lives in these houses now begin to decorate based on what they want. They don't conform to what, oh, this is what an American family should have in their home and what this American dream should look like. And that gives birth to kind of the American dream getting pushed aside and people focusing more on what they want for their family. So people began to have more or less kids or not have kids at all. Divorces became way more common during the 1970s. Women began to break out of these social barriers that were placed on them that they had to conform to originally in the last 2 decades. And this gave birth to the feminist movement and women just fighting against these society norms that they had to live with for the past 2 decades.
Now to bat for nonconformity is the 1980s. And within the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan definitely stood up for everything that people had been scared of during the 1950s and 1960s. Because within those time periods, people were so, like, they had this constant fear of the nuclear bomb being dropped on them. But within the 1980s, Ronald Reagan made them break away from their conformist ways and not be scared anymore, because he went and he confronted Mikhail Gorbachev, which was the Soviet Union general. And by confronting Gorbachev, he was able to make people break away from this constant fear. And that made people go out to rock and roll bands and like the crazy blue eyeshadow to their eyebrows and like the poofy skirts everywhere. And it just like, it changed the atmosphere for the like nonconformists and the conformists.
Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. Just like to break a mental sweat too. But now that you're here, let's talk about psychology. Let's break this down from a fundamental standpoint. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about psychology, which is a little bit of learning about your brain today, and conformity and nonconformity based on an experiment that I have seen. So it is going to be based off of 2 shirts. Doesn't have to be shirts, it can be anything. But how it works is we have Kylie here, conformity. I see Kylie wearing this shirt at school and I was like, oh, Kylie, I really love your shirt, that's so cute. Now, earlier in the day, Kylie has been thinking about how awful her shirt is, how much she hates it, it's really ugly. But since I told her I like it, she decides that she's gonna wear that shirt all the time because her right brain gets a feeling, you know, that they're fitting in. So the feeling kind of overrides the fact that she doesn't really like the shirt, and it's gonna make her conform because that feeling was good. She wants to feel that way again. Now, Stephanie here is non-conformity. I see this shirt. I think it's ugly. I'm not saying anything to her. Now, because I haven't said anything to her, I didn't tell her I didn't like her shirt, but I also didn't tell her I like it. Now, she's just going to continue wearing things like this because she doesn't know she's doing anything wrong. No one has said anything to her. So her brain is still striving to reach that feeling that makes her feel good that she's fitting in. But she's always going to miss the mark because no one said anything to her. So that's how Stephanie ends up not conforming, because she's wearing things that no one really likes, but it's just because it's like what she likes to wear and no one said anything to her. So that's her left brain telling her not to conform, to be unique, because her right brain hasn't kicked in yet because she hasn't got that feeling. So your left brain does not want you to conform. Your left brain says be unique, be yourself. Your right brain, it just keeps looking for that feeling that you get when you do conform. So that was the shirt experiment, and conformity and non-conformity. And
Good two, good two. Good two, good two, good two. Oh! I was gonna finish jogging out my dinger, but I guess I'll stop here and talk to you guys about the importance of conformity and non-conformity in ethics. Okay, so for our unit on ethics, which is basically the study of how humans make choices and why they make those choices, we wanted to look at how conformity and non-conformity affects the choices that you make, and how specifically how your parents and your peers affect these choices that you make throughout your life. So in order to gain some more perspective on what you guys thought about this topic, we constructed a survey and handed it out to about 110 people. And on the survey, we essentially said, just asking how your parents and how your peers affect the choices that you make throughout your day. And 100% of the people we surveyed said that either their peers or their parents impacted the choices that they made.
And to show the importance of ethics through conformity and non-conformity, we decided to create a timeline throughout your life of how you're taught to conform and to not conform. And we did that demonstration on the baseball field.
Okay, so when you're a little kid, you have a tendency to conform and mimic what your parents do, act, how they speak, how they treat others. And during this part of life, this is the time where you conform the most, because you're making decisions based on what how your parents made decisions, because that's the only thing you know. Your parents are your authoritative figures, and that's how you're going to conform at this time of your life.
so now at this point in your life, you're getting older, you have more people around you, and you start to realize that your old beliefs were kind of a little too childish. Now you think different things. You're starting to think about the career you want to go into. And you have two options. One, you can conform to what your parents, your family, and everyone's telling you. Or two, you can follow your own dream and you can do whatever you want. So now that, since you have so many different people around you, you have different people telling you different things, and this is a time in your life that conformity and non-conformity is really big.
So at this point in your life, you're choosing to conform or not conform, as in you're doing what everyone wants you to do, like become a doctor, or you're doing what you want to do and following your dreams, like becoming an astronaut. But really, if you follow your dreams, it could go one or two ways. It could go great and you could have a great life and do exactly what you want to be doing, or it could go badly, you can't get the job, and you would just be wishing you did what you were supposed to be doing.
At this point in your life, you've gone through the stages of conforming to your parents and not conforming to your peers. And now it's time for you to start your own family, and the cycle of conforming and non-conforming restarts, and you have to teach your kids the way of conforming. We just finished our game on conformity and non-conformity.
Thanks for watching.
We hope our views impacted you.